What if you could extend the power of Revit by visually programming it to work for you? Now, what if I told you that you could do this all without having to learn code? Sounds too good to be true, right? Well, to our architect, designer, and engineering viewers out there, this could be your future. Welcome to Bridging the Gap with Applied Software. I'm your host, Todd Wyant. This is the show where we empower you to transform industries by championing innovation. Please feel free to interact with us by liking or commenting on this video. We'd love to hear from you. Today we are excited to be joined by Christopher Riddell, one of our senior solutions specialists and experienced BIM managers. He's also the host of our podcast and webinar series titled the AEC Disruptors. Welcome to the show, Christopher.
Yeah, thanks. It's different to not be asking the questions.
Yeah, well, a whole different view of the world, huh? Yep. So I was wondering if you could start by telling us just a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I have an education in architecture and building construction. Okay. I worked for an architecture firm for 7+ years. It was architecture and engineering, where I served as their BIM manager. And throughout that process, that's when I really started digging into what Dynamo could offer.
Nice. So Autodesk Dynamo is built as a computational BIM design software. What does that really mean in practice, though?
So what computational BIM is it's known as an innovative solution or approach that a user creates logic to generate or automate building information. Okay. So then when I read that, I'm like, I don't know what that means. So what does it actually mean? So what it really means is we're able to use something like Dynamo, a programming language that we can pull data out of a model, we can push data, and we can further integrate so we become more efficient and more effective in how we work.
Gotcha. So how does it really get incorporated into kind of a daily workflow?
So how is it being used? So everyone wants to talk about like the really sexy towers you see that are all curved and all over the place. Yeah. That is an application, but where it really gets used is automated tasks. Okay. So I always say that, you're working on something and you say there has to be a better way than this. Chances are there is. And the way to do that is using things like Dynamo. So we can do things from create sheets, or we can create views. Or we can make that really crazy parametric tower, but where we see it the most is automating tasks.
Gotcha. So how can Dynamo help verify that your design is going to perform in real life the way it is on paper?
So that's interesting because we want to be able to save money by figuring out ahead of time, is it actually going to work? So I've seen variations where we do things for energy analysis, lighting simulations. Okay. I actually worked on a project that was a healthcare project. So imagine a nurse's station sitting in the middle of a floor. Yeah. And they wanted to make sure that they had visual control and that when they build it, it's going to work the way they expected. We created a script that would array a line around a figure, and wherever it stopped or hit a wall, it would stop. So you could quickly see dead zones wherever they were, and from there you could say, okay, it is gonna operate the way we expect, or it's not. Yeah. And we actually made design changes because of that. So we saw, hey, this nurse doesn't have visibility on this patient, why don't we change the layout of this? But really you're seeing in things like that, and then things like energy analysis, simulations for anything to do heating on the floor, lighting, and we can tie it into some of these other systems that we use for that. Interesting.
So I'm wondering what some maybe potential challenges for architects who tend to be more on the creative side.
Too creative?
What are some of the challenges in using a computational process in Dynamo?
I would say the logic. Well, actually I'd say discipline. So architecture of trade, I'm used to that creative process, so I'm all over the place. But what Dynamo is asking for is a very linear workflow, a very linear process. You come up with it, you put inputs into it, you process those inputs, and you spit out an output. Gotcha. Anything outside of that is a little too complicated. So for the most common architect, the most creative free thinker, the problem they're going to have is the logic behind it. Being able to actually think, okay, what am I trying to achieve? Because it's different than what we're doing on a day-to-day. We're not just thinking about buildings and what goes into the building, but now we have to switch our minds off a little bit, but we have to think about the visual programming aspect. Now, I don't have to know programming. When I was in school, I just slept through CS for computer science, and I wish I didn't, because now it's like, man, I'm using this every day. Yeah. But for just the common person, you still need to be able to wrap your head around that logical process that it's going to ask you to go through. So I would say, if anything, it's really that. Outside of that, the options are endless in what we can do.
Nice. So more so like mapping it out on the front end to kind of see where the end is and then work backwards.
And when we teach it, we always say you need to know where you're trying to go. So I need to know in the end that I want to create a I want to make a wall, okay?
Right.
So I need to know, what do I need to get to that wall? I need these 3 things, and I work backwards. And so that's how we always teach it, because if you start with, when you look at these graphs and you look how Dynamo's used, the very first thing may be select a line. But then, you know, when you get 2 feet down the line, now we're actually creating something. You would have never connected those dots.
Yeah.
So being able to plan, which a lot of architects, we aren't good at that. So being able to plan and think where we're trying to head and how we can backtrack, that would be one of the struggles.
Gotcha. Interesting. So you mentioned the nurses station. Any other kind of examples of you personally using Dynamo?
Too many to count. So I mean, I got someone here coined the term Dynamo vision, where if you don't, when you start learning Dynamo, you want to use it for everything.
Yeah.
And so I'd spend hours on something and realize, well, wow, I didn't need to do that. But some great applications that I have done is I focused on how we can re-engage our senior project managers. So many of these, they don't have the experience to use the software, and whether they're not going to learn how to use Revit, or they can, or they have other responsibilities. What I was able to do is use Dynamo as a link between their experience and the Revit model.
Okay.
And so I created things, for instance, where you would be able to create, say, floor finishes. We can model this floor, but you could do this just by filling out an Excel file. So you would be able to fill out Excel, never open Revit in your life, fill out Excel, hand that over to me, and I made scripts that I could then create the floors from that. I can create walls from it, I can add finishes, I can place rooms, but that was one application. So I mean, even from cartooning a set, so if you're a project manager and you know what sheets you want in your set, there's no reason to ask me to manually make them all. You could go through and create it using Excel, and then we have scripts that will push that forward. So there have been other things. I mean, my wife, who's also in the industry, asked me to make her a spiral slide for a worship space. Okay. So you can make the really cool geometric things. Yeah. But one thing that I really liked was being able to take that senior project manager with all the experience that wasn't capable, or not capable, wasn't accustomed or comfortable in the software. And I could get them re-engaged, get their experience back in the project, simply by using something like Excel as the link between the Revit model. Yeah. What's great about Dynamo is it does connect to these other databases. So not only does it connect to Revit, it connects to Excel. So a lot of my practical examples I've used in the past use that link, because that's something, you know, anyone's comfortable with. And now you can actually influence or make a model from it. Yeah, very cool. So you're really bringing all those connection points together, bringing everybody's knowledge base into one. And just trying to get everyone re-engaged. You know, there's always that hesitation to adopt the software because it's something else I need to learn, or I'm too busy, or I don't have the time. Well, those are all valid excuses or reasons. And so if we can help make that a little easier on them and get them engaged in a way that they're more comfortable, I mean, why not do that? And Dynamo is the perfect solution for that. Shifting gears into generative design, how can you conceptualize, design, and build using Dynamo? With Dynamo, yeah. So generative design has become kind of the buzzword. Sure. And it really uses AI technologies, or artificial intelligence technologies, to help us get there. So what Autodesk has done is they created something known as Project Refinery. Okay. So what Project Refinery is it actually allows us to use Dynamo to get to this generative state. So that's the groundwork. Right? So how does it help? So now what I can do is, whether we're using Excel or something else, but we can start in the programming phase. And we can create all of the program that we need for this facility. Perhaps you're the owner and you provide me, I need these 15 rooms. With Dynamo, we can, and we've actually done this, I've done this, we can create, say we want to create programming bubbles. So in Revit, we want to use little masses with colors so that we can use it as representation of what this layout can look like. Well, if it's up to me, it's very limited options in what I can create, because my mind is what's going to hold us back, right? With generative design, what we're able to do is we can eliminate the human part of that. So all I do is I give the constraints. So I say that this is my program, so this is the programming part, and I say several rules. What needs to connect, what needs to be next to, what can it not be next to, adjacency-wise. So now we're in the design part. So I've given the parameters to the beginning. What Dynamo can do is we create scripts to create one layout. That's all we gotta do first, is have Dynamo be able to take that information and come up with one layout. Yeah. So now we're in the design phase. This is the conceptual part. So then where does generative design come into play? Well, when we get into Project Refinery, what Project Refinery does is it creates thousands more options that we weren't able to before, and now as an architect I can focus on getting the right one, not just the one that I was limited to think about, which was based on my own experiences.
Sure.
So for someone to say, oh, we're going to take the architect out, that's not the case either, because you still need the architect to add the parameters. You still need the architect to approve, or not necessarily approve, but refine that final example. So it gets past all the bad stuff and gets us all the way to the end.
Nice. So how does it help on the productivity side? Because if you're getting 100 designs thrown your way, they might be the best 100 designs, something that you haven't thought of, but now you have 100 designs to crank through. Where any tips for achieving greater productivity? So
when it comes to using Dynamo for just productivity in general, the goal would be to have enough built-in scripts or whatever you want to call them, so that you can save time on the mundane tasks.
Gotcha.
So that when we look at those 100 best options, we may have 100 options to sift through. Chances are we'll be able to narrow it down even with Dynamo to say 50, say 25. You still may need to use your experience to be able to go through those and understand those and actually identify the best, because some, based on your experience, you're going to say, no, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But what the goal would be is, if you're at that generative design phase, you've already kind of gone through trying to get your processes more up to speed or a little more productive and efficient.
Right.
And so I always say, by even doing those really mundane things, if I can save you an hour every single day on a project, that's 1 hour you now have every single day to apply to something else. Now, whether you want to use it to sift through your 100 design options to get the very best one, whether you want to use it for more some sort of performance analysis, or maybe you just want to pocket that hour and say, I did it in one less hour.
Right.
So when someone says, well, now I got 100 options, I think just your own experience is going to be able to sift through most of those. Refinery gives you a lot of nice dashboards and things that you can compare the options, so you really have the tools that you need. But the goal is that we would build efficiencies in other processes so we can now gain more time to apply towards design.
Gotcha. Very cool. Makes sense. So last question, if you can kind of look into your crystal ball, where do you see the industry in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, if the architects aren't just working for robots, I would say that no, I think there's going to be a further push towards generative design in general, because what's happening now is owners are asking for more, and they're asking it to be done cheaper.
Sure.
You will hear people say all the time, things like shows on HDTV have sort of made the architecture industry look like it's a lot simpler to do something. So now that you've seen how quickly it created a rendering, you don't understand why it takes me as much as I say it takes me.
Right.
So I think we're going to be forced in a way into this idea of, one, being able to automate as much as we can in our mundane, so that we can make profits and we can build on that in another area. But I do think there's going to be a focus on generative design, because AI technologies are going to improve, and what's going to happen is more and more people are going to be doing it, creating better options, and competitors are going to have to live up to that in order to be able to continue to compete.
Sure.
Because now an owner may say, instead of giving me 2 design options for the plan, I've now heard of this, I want 100 options, and I want to be the one to look through it. Now, I hope we never get there, but I certainly could see that there's going to be a push in generative design. So I would tell everyone that start getting into it, start understanding how Dynamo works, because it really will make you efficient, even if you just do that much.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of growth, especially when it comes to generative design. I think it's untapped. And as a final note, things that I would look at is I always look to see how other industries are using these technologies. So other industries are using things like generative design, whether it's in automobile or product design or whatever it is. We need to look at those industries, see what we can glean from those, and then apply it to our own. And that's something that we're not good at. But I think if we can do that, we don't have to make it up. Somebody's already kind of getting us there.
Sure. Yeah. Take the best from what they're doing and improve upon it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Christopher. Really appreciate all the info on Dynamo and generative design.
Yeah, no, this was fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you guys to those of you who are watching. If you like what you heard today from Christopher, you can get more of him. You can check out his podcast and the link below. Also, if you're interested in Dynamo, Christopher is coming to Texas soon for a roadshow. That link will be down below for more information. And if you just want to know more about our products or services here at Applied Software, you can always visit ASTI.com. Until next time, I'm Todd Wyant, thanking you for joining us on Bridging the Gap. Keep innovating.